Hello Oilers fans, Austin here, and welcome to today's video where I will be discussing Ken Holland and kind of his legacy with the Edmonton Oilers. It was announced this morning that he would not be returning to the Edmonton Oilers in any capacity moving forward. His 5-year contract is now expired, and the team is letting him walk. He can ride off into the sunset and retire a Hall of Famer. Obviously, he never won a cup in Edmonton, but I wanted to take kind of a deeper dive into his time with the Oilers, take a look at some of his key acquisitions, some of the key trades that he made, his key draft picks, and then kind of reflect on his entire tenure and, discuss whether it was worth it, if Edmonton got that GM hire right and what they need to move, or improve on moving forward with their next general manager. I do believe Jeff Jackson will be taking over in the meantime. He's going to be involved with the draft. He's going to be involved with the free agent window that's about to open up. Right now, the buyout window is open, so we'll see if Edmonton ends up buying out contracts like Jack Campbell. But, in saying that, this video is about Ken Holland, his legacy with the Edmonton Oilers, and whether or not his time here was seen as a positive in oil country. If you like these off-season videos and you want to see more, just make sure you hit that like button today. And if at the end of the video you ended up really enjoying it, make sure you subscribe if you are not yet subscribed, and let's jump into it. So, as I mentioned, Ken Holland, Darren Dreger, he put out a tweet this morning. Ken Holland officially told the Oilers yesterday that he will not return to the team next season in any capacity. And while Holland is now free to talk to other teams, he has not yet done so and is expected to take some time before deciding what his next move will be. And then, of course, Jeff Jackson, he put out an official statement through the Edmonton Oilers. That was posted as well. Highly recommend checking it out. It's mostly just corporate speak for thank you for your time. See you later. So now when we look at Ken Holland's legacy, of course, you can pause the video if you need to. There's a lot of information on the screen. So if you need to pause it, write things down. If you need to pause throughout the video as well, that is A-okay. Now, I'm not including every single signing that he's made. I'm not including every single trade that he's made and every single draft pick. What I am including on the screen right here is his key, the most key signings, the most key trades that, had the most impact on the roster. Whether it was negative or positive. Same with the signings. Of course, everyone that's listed in key signings currently is still on the team right now, other than, I think, Connor Brown, who is a pending UFA. Key draft picks, that sort of thing, playoff records. So let's just jump into it. Let's start with his draft picks here. Now, 2019, his first year with the team, he drafted Philip Broberg in the first round, 8th overall, and until the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, and mostly the Stanley Cup finals, Philip Broberg has not been able to really crack the team's roster full time. He hasn't been able to solidify a spot on that defensive core, but there is signs here that Philip Broberg has taken a massive step in his development, and there were better players available in that first round. A lot of people weren't sure about the Broberg pick. I personally really liked it at the time, but as time has gone on, of course, hindsight is 2020. I think Broberg, he's developed slower than I think the organization thought that he would, but at the end of the day, I think this is a good player, and I think he's going to be very impactful moving forward on this defensive core, especially heading into next season. I do imagine he will be on the team in a full-time capacity next year. Next draft pick I want to talk about is Raph Lavoie. That was also in 2019. He is a sniper. He, lights up Bakersfield regularly, has not been able to forge a position on the Edmonton Oilers. There is a chance, depending how the contract situation works this summer, he might be able to fight for a 4th or 3rd line spot on this roster. Someone like Lavoie, though, he is a skilled forward. He is a shooter, volume shooter, and, he can play the power play. There's just not a lot of room for him in terms of a role here. So Raph Lavoie, he's someone that has value if they wanted to try and move on from him, maybe package him in a deal, depending how things work. There is value in this player. I like Raph Lavoie a lot. I think he's a good player, and who knows, he might be on the team in the future. Again, one of those players that's kind of developed a little bit slowly, but I think he's NHL ready. There's just not much of a position for him on the team. It's not worth playing a player like him with his offensive upside on the 4th line for 5 or 6 minutes a night. Next player I want to talk about here is Dylan Holloway in 2020. That was in round 1, pick number 14. There were much better players available, and as much as I love Dylan Holloway, I'm happy that he made an impact in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. played over 20 games, had a few goals, which was good to see. Obviously, he's pretty hit up and down in the regular season, but I really do think that he has an opportunity to crack the top 6 heading out of training camp in September into October into the 24-25 season. Dylan Holloway, of course, I love his play style. There were better picks available at number 14. Again, hindsight is really, really big here. But if you look at the overall key draft picks, I've only listed 5 players total. That kind of shows just how weak Ken Holland was at drafting in general. There's no impact draft picks on the roster right now other than Holloway and Broberg. But again, they're not giving you, Broberg, he gave us top 4 minutes in the playoffs, but he's a little out of his element in the top 4. He should be on the 3rd pair starting next season. Dylan Holloway, he was playing top 6 minutes with Draisaitl. He did produce a little bit, but not at a level that you want a second liner. So again, you look at other teams, other players that were taken in those ranges, players that were taken after Broberg, after Holloway, after Bourgault. It's kind of tough sitting here and trying to be like, oh, those were good picks, because these are players that are good and will be good. I don't know if they're going to be great. I don't know if they're going to have the impact, the long-term impact that other draft picks that the organization has made in years past. You look at some of the picks that Chiarelli made, Evan Bouchard, Ryan McLeod, Stuart Skinner, Vinny Desharnais, players that they developed, homegrown talent that developed and did well on the team, continue to do well on the team. And for Ken Holland, not many of his draft picks are making an impact, but these are the picks that I've listed that I think still have some value here. Xavier Bourgault, there is still a chance that he can develop. It's tough. A lot of players that were picked in 2021, that 2020, 2021, 2022 range, because of the impacts of the pandemic. There a lot of players, there's not a lot of players from these drafts making an impact right now, so it's unfair to just call these players a bust. Their development was impacted greatly because of the pandemic, lost time. So Bourgault, he's had a slow start in the minors in the AHL. He didn't have a terrific year this year, but there's a chance that he bounces back. He is a very offensively gifted player. Again, another volume shooter. So who knows what happens with Bourgault in the future. And then their 2023 draft pick, Bo Aki, or Aki, round 2, number 56 overall in 2023. Terrific offensive defenseman, tons of upside. His season was cut short in the in junior this year with an injury, but I do like him. There is an opportunity for him to grow into a role on this team in the future. Another value player that can make an impact, second unit power play, that sort of thing. Good puck mover too. Now, when we look at key signings, these aren't just UFAs. These are just in general. Some of these players were on the team already. They got raises from Ken Holland, but Ken Holland's key signings here. Zach Hyman, 7-year, $38.5 million contract. At the time, it was seen as too much term for the player. Not necessarily the AAV, the average annual value, but a lot of people, thought that this contract would not age well. This contract is aging amazingly. This might be one of the best, if not the best contracts in the entire NHL right now, based on the production that Zach Hyman has given the team. Terrific signing from Ken Holland. Gets all the credit in the world for this one. Now, the complete opposite here. Darnell Nurse was given an 8-year, $74 million contract, or $9.25 million per season for 8 years, coming off that, that unsustainable shooting percentage, that bit of a heater that he went on in the Canadian division in 2021. This is a player that, obviously, he's a good player, good defenseman. He's someone that obviously has a lot of value on this team. He's one of the locker room leaders. He wears an A on his sweater. It's too much money. Ken Holland, there was 1 year left on his bridge deal before signing the contract. He didn't need to sign this contract. Ken Holland didn't need to offer this contract. They could have waited 1 more year to see if that shooting percentage would have come down just a little bit. I understand they were trying to lock him up. I think they thought where he was in his development at that time. He's 25, 26, and, sky was the limit kind of thing. Really blossomed. He was playing tons of minutes in the playoffs. Of course, they got swept by Winnipeg. Again, this is a contract that is hampering the team right now. It's going to hamper the team in the future, and he has a full no move. Sorry, Oilers fans. I can't see the team trading him. I can't see him wanting to waive his no trade clause either. He likes it in Edmonton. Obviously, Connor McDavid is one of his best friends. That's a tough one. I think we're stuck with him. I think what the Oilers need to do moving forward, the next general manager, is just get him a capable defenseman to play on the second pair. Optimally, someone that can move the puck and allow Darnell Nurse to use his best asset, which is his skating. Nurse likes to jump up in the play. If you have a defenseman playing with him that can move the puck very, very quickly, it allows Nurse to also jump into the play and prevent the team from being hemmed in their own zone for God knows how long when he's out there. Next player I want to talk about is Evander Kane, 4-year, $20.5 million contract. This one, I think was good at the time. It might have been 2 years too long, maybe 1 year too long. For Evander Kane, of course, injuries have affected his ability to produce at the level that I think they thought he would continue to produce at when he initially signed with the team, when San Jose terminated his contract. Evander Kane, that first year with the team, he was terrific. He was scoring goals. The playoffs, the goals that he scored in the playoffs was really good. He just hasn't been the same since, and now injuries are starting to take a toll. This year was a sports hernia. Last year, very unfortunate. He was stepped on, a skate on the wrist. Again, it's a tough situation. I think overall, Evander Kane, good player, not great. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's turning 33 this year, and his style of play, I'm very worried about the last 2 years of this contract. Could be a trade candidate, in my opinion. Again, I like the player. I understand why they gave him that contract at the time. It hasn't aged well. That's not really Ken Holland's fault. That's just how Father Time works, and that's also just how injuries work with players sometimes. Hopefully, Evander Kane, if they keep him, there is a chance that they try and move him. At the trade deadline, he has to submit a 16-team list. So you never know with Evander Kane. I don't think he would be traded this summer. He may be traded at the trade deadline, but who knows? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, great deal by Ken Holland. 8 years, $41 million. This will bring Nugent-Hopkins into the end of his career, the twilight of his career. He wants to remain an Oiler his whole life, and just over $5 million a year. I love this contract that Nugent-Hopkins signed. I love the deal and the value for it. Obviously, Nugent-Hopkins, he had over 100 points last year. His production regressed this year. That's to be expected. If he's putting up 60, 70 points per year on this deal, that's perfect. And that's what Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to bring. Of course, power play specialist. He plays on the PK as well. Love that deal. Good job, Ken Holland. And again, now we're talking about a bad contract. Jack Campbell, 5 years, $25 million. This was a deal that should not have ever been signed. I understand wanting to bring Jack Campbell in. I don't understand giving him 5 years. There was a lot of data that showed that Jack Campbell was one of those goaltenders that would have been very risky to give more than 1 or 2 years. Of course, things have not worked out. He was sent to the minors this year. Nobody picked him up on waivers because nobody has the cap space to pay a goaltender like Jack Campbell $5 million per season. He is a buyout candidate this summer. Watch for him to get bought out. I'd be shocked if he's not bought out by the Edmonton Oilers. It'll save $3.5 million against the cap this season that they can go and use to sign another player. They have Olivier Rodrigue in the minors that might be NHL ready soon. They still have Stuart Skinner on a good deal, and depending on the goaltender market, that sort of thing. Jack Campbell's time in Edmonton has not gone well. I love Soup. I love him. I think he's a good person. Bad contract from Ken Holland. Another bad contract was Cody Ceci. This was a weird one. 4 years, $13 million. It sounds like Cody Ceci's camp called Ken Holland and was like, hey, we want to sign with you. And Ken Holland just went, okay. It didn't really try and look at other options. It was just, yeah, we'll bring Cody Ceci in. And that was that. For Cody Ceci, obviously, a lot of discourse around him, his play, his role on the team. At this point in his career, he's a third-pair defenseman. They kept trying to play him with Darnell Nurse for several years now. Has not worked. Cody Ceci, I would like to see traded, moved on from, and upgraded this summer. It's not like the worst contract in the world. If it had been 5 years or more, that would have been very, very bad. 4 years, you can kind of swallow that a little bit, but still don't like it. I think there could have been better options there, but not like the worst deal on the planet. Brett Kulak, 4 years, $11 million. This was another head scratcher. I like Brett Kulak a lot. I don't know if the term made sense. I probably would have given Kulak 2 years. Again, hindsight's huge here. Brett Kulak is another candidate that they might try and move to free up some cap space. He's almost $3 million per year right now. Again, I think Brett Kulak, good player, good skater, good defenseman, but he's a third-pair defenseman. Can you afford to pay third-pair defenseman almost $3 million a year? Same with Cody Ceci, right? Like, it's just not super realistic. You need to find better value there. So Brett Kulak, he has value, though. I think there's teams that would be willing to take him on. Of course, if he stays with the Oilers, that's also okay with me. He only has a couple years left. This is a contract that isn't terrible. So pretty indifferent. That's a neutral contract. Stuart Skinner, 3 years, $7.8 million. I think this contract is great. Great value for a player that just finished his second full season in the NHL, helped bring the Edmonton Oilers to the Stanley Cup final, played well in the Stanley Cup final. We always ask for Stuart Skinner, just play average, 900 save percentage, that sort of thing. He did that in the postseason. He did that in the Stanley Cup final. The sky's the limit for Stuart Skinner. He's going to get better and better. So I really like this contract. I think he's worth the money for sure. And, he's shown flashes of brilliance. And then he has shown flashes of, like, is he about to crumble under the pressure here? But that's to be expected from young goaltenders. I really do think Stuart Skinner heading into this season will be much better. However, I still would like Edmonton to find a way to get another goaltender to play with him and, spread the minutes out, spread the games out, go 50-50, platoon, a 1A, 1B situation. But Stuart Skinner, that's a good contract. No problems there at all. Evan Bouchard, he had to get bridged. So 2 years, $7.8 million contract. Again, the value right now that Bouchard's providing, very, very good. When this bridge deal is done, though, he's probably going to command $9 or $10 million per year on his next contract. They still have to re-sign Draisaitl. I have no idea what that's going to look like. But for now, the value is fine. If they could have found a way to extend Bouchard long-term, let's say like 6 or 7 years at like $5 million per a year or two ago, that would have been great. They waited a little bit too long to bridge him. Of course, they had to give him a bridge deal because they didn't have the cap space to give him the long-term higher dollar figure that he wanted. And now he's going to make a ton of money. So, and with Darnell Nurse on the books as well, is it, like, are they going to be able to have Nurse at $9.25 million a year and then Bouchard in the future at about $9 or $10 million a year? I don't know if that's very sustainable. We'll see what happens. But right now, that contract's fine. I'm glad that Ken Holland locked him up for 2 years and not just one, because obviously that the amount of money he would be owed right now if that was the case. So for the Edmonton Oilers, hopefully they let Bouchard play out the last year of this bridge contract before they re-sign him. Don't make the same mistake as Darnell Nurse, because if Bouchard does regress for any reason, we don't want two really highly overpaid defensemen. Ryan McLeod, 2 years, $4.2 million. I have no issues with that. I think Ryan McLeod is overhated, in my opinion, by some section of the fans. I think Ryan McLeod, some of his defensive metrics are really, really good. Would you like a little bit more offense? Yes. Again, that's a player that you could move on from if you needed to free up a couple $1 million. He's not really harming the team as a whole. And then the last player, Connor Brown, 1 year, $4 million contract. Of course, $3.25 million of that will hit the books this year because it was a signing bonus. Cap overage is what they're doing with it. Connor Brown, of course, tons of value in the postseason. Struggled really hard in the regular season coming off that. I think it was a ACL injury or something. I can't remember what it was for Connor Brown. He looks 100% now. If they were to re-sign Brown, I would love that. But those were the key signings from Ken Holland. Some good contracts in there, good value, some bad. Again, up and down like a toilet seat, as Ken Holland would say. Now let's look at the key trades here. So this year, Henrique and Carrick for a first, fourth, and a fifth. Henrique and Carrick, their salaries were retained. They even got Tampa to retain part of, I think, Henrique's salary as well. Henrique, really good in the postseason. Really liked his play. If they can find a way to bring him back, that's awesome. I think overall this trade was a win for the Oilers. Of course, giving up a first, not always great, but that pick is going to be number 31 in this year's draft. And knowing Ken Holland's draft record and the team's draft record over the last few years, honestly, not as bad as I think some fans are making it out to be. I think that was a good trade. Now, Ekholm and a sixth for Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, a first and a fourth. That's a terrific trade. Matthias Ekholm is the best defenseman the team has had since Chris Pronger. That is a huge win for Ken Holland, like 10 out of 10, A+ all the way. Then you had Warren Foegele for Ethan Bear. I'm someone that loved Ethan Bear, but Warren Foegele, he provided a lot of value for the Edmonton Oilers. He scored 20 goals this year for the first time in his career. He drives play, really good advanced metrics too. He just doesn't have like a whole lot of finish in his game, but he is very, very good. I think that was a good trade, very positive trade for Edmonton. Then I have future considerations for Yamamoto and Kostin. Of course, that was the rights to sign Kostin. And then Yamamoto had $3 million left on his contract. That was a cap dump so that they had the cap space to sign Evan Bouchard. I consider that a key trade because they used that money savings from trading Yamamoto to sign Bouchard to that bridge. I'm super okay with that. I have no issues with that at all. That was a good trade. And then Duncan Keith for Caleb Jones, I listed in there because I think that was another key trade that obviously at the time, a lot of discourse around it. Duncan Keith didn't put up great metrics if you're into the advanced analytics, but I think Duncan Keith had a net positive on the organization. I think he's still kind of around the organization too. I think he had a net positive on Evan Bouchard's game as well. I know some people overthink that kind of stuff and they don't think that there's enough value there to justify certain moves, especially the cap hit that Duncan Keith had. Like, I understand. I totally get it. The Oilers had a lot of cap space in 2022 and they spent a lot of money on different players that maybe they should have looked at not spending that money on. But again, this was a situation where Ken Holland was trying to do what he could. He was trying to find the value that he could. And I guess they got him in 2021, right? For the 21-22 season, and then he retired before 22-23. Either way, that was a key trade in my opinion. Now, obviously, the other trades that Ken Holland made, like 2 seconds and Sam Gagner for Athanasiou, like that's a bad trade. And there's some other trades that were pretty miss as well, but not egregious misses, like not like the Peter Chiarelli trades where it's just like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? Like he's turning players like Eberle for Strome, like just, things like that. It's like, what are we doing here? Just not good trades. Ken Holland didn't make a like egregiously bad trade, and he made a couple really good trades. So, again, kind of in the middle there. Now, looking at Ken Holland's playoff record, 1920 lost qualifying round to Chicago. That's kind of a wash season to me anyways. With the impact of the pandemic, then you had the bubble situation, and that was a weird one. Hard to expect the Oilers to win around there. Obviously, they should have beat Chicago. It happens. 2020, 2021, they lost in the first round to Winnipeg. They got swept by the Winnipeg Jets in the first round. They got goalied by Connor Hellebuck. The Oilers played more than good enough to win that series. They got goalied. Winnipeg was, they scored timely goals when they had to. But if you look at Connor Hellebuck after that series, Montreal absolutely destroyed them. It was a weird year. Again, 1920, 2021, those were weird years. 21-22, they lost in the conference finals to Colorado, the eventual Stanley Cup champions. 22-23, they lost in the second round to Vegas in 6 games, the eventual Stanley Cup champions. And then 23-24, they lost in the Cup final. That was most recently, just less than a week ago. They lost to the Florida Panthers in the Cup final. Obviously, you like to see that the Oilers have made the playoffs 5 straight seasons under Ken Holland. I mean, you can say 4 straight seasons. A lot of people don't consider the qualifying round as like the playoffs, but the stats count in their playoff stats. So it's technically the playoffs, even though it's not. I understand the wording's a little strange. Before that, obviously, Peter Chiarelli, the way Peter Chiarelli gutted this team before Ken Holland came in, there's credit to give Holland to be able to quickly retool on the fly, get this team back into a playoff position, and then build on that. He did build on that. He brought in really good pieces, signed guys that other teams either didn't want or contract situations. He lucked out. Of course, the Evander Kane situation, that was a bit of luck. Corey Perry, bit of luck there. It happens. Sometimes you got to be good to be lucky to be good. You look at the playoff record, though, 0 Stanley Cups in Connor McDavid's window right now. So when we look at Ken Holland as a whole, his overall, impact on this team, the cup window is still open. I know there's a lot of question marks heading into the offseason, who they're going to bring back, who's going to leave the team, but the cup window is for sure still open right now. His trade record, I gave him a C+. Again, some really good trades, some trades that you just don't move the needle at all, a couple bad trades, it happens. Draft record, a D-. His draft record is very poor, and I will not defend his draft record at all. That is a D-. Cap space right now is very limited, so the next general manager taking over, of course, right now it's going to be Jeff Jackson. Not much wiggle room to, go out and find like a big fish. They're going to have to find value. Their analytics department is going to have to find value, and I hope it does. So he left the team in a pretty tough spot cap-wise. Now, bad contracts. I listed 3 bad contracts currently on the team. Jack Campbell, Darnell Nurse, and Evander Kane. Now, of course, Evander Kane, you can say that's not a bad contract as long as he's healthy. That's fine. Cody Ceci can be listed as a bad contract as well. So it could be 3 or 4, depending how you want to look at it. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. There's only a couple egregious contracts on this team that I consider very, very bad. Darnell Nurse is obviously the worst one. Jack Campbell is right there with it. But Jack Campbell, you can buy him out. Darnell Nurse, you cannot buy him out. That is not a buyout candidate at all. His contract is buyout proof. So, when we look at the bad contracts, not terrible. Not terrible. But his overall grade for me, I give a C-. I don't think that he moved the needle enough to get this team a championship. I think with Connor McDavid, at minimum, should have been 1 cup ring in the 5 years that Ken Holland was here. I understand that there was a lot of situations that Ken Holland was not in control of. The pandemic, salary cap being flat. A lot of different things happened when Ken Holland was the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. There's some good, there's some bad. If Peter Chiarelli gets an F for his time in Edmonton, Chiarelli, it's funny. Chiarelli probably gets an F for free agent signings. He probably gets an F for his trades. He gets like a C for his contracts. Gave Draisaitl a good contract. And then he gets like, he gets an A for his drafting at Edmonton. And Ken Holland, he's kind of in the middle of everything. Bad drafting though. Free agent signings, okay, if not good. Internal contracts, bad with Darnell Nurse. Not terrible, though, with other players. So it's weird. Ken Holland's legacy, he'll be known as, he'll be seen as positive in the long run for the Edmonton Oilers. Whatever you think, let me know in the comments section below. Ken Holland, obviously, fans are going to talk about this for a long time. Hopefully the next general manager hire is the right hire. Like, hopefully they do their due diligence. It's not just the first name that they see, someone that, Hockey Hall of Fame or Hockey Canada ties, like, do an in-depth search and get the next hire right, because Connor McDavid needs a cup right now. Like in the next 2-3 years minimum, there has to be at least 1 Stanley Cup championship on this team. Otherwise, the organization will have completely failed him. But I want to know what all of you think. What did you think of Ken Holland's time here? Was he good? Was he bad? Was there anything that I didn't list that you wanted to talk about? Make sure you let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, if you liked today's video, make sure you hit like. If you really liked it, make sure you hit subscribe. Tomorrow, I will have a draft video up, and then I will also be live streaming the NHL draft tomorrow night. So make sure to look out for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And like always, tell someone that you love them. Fight like a kid. Fight like Ben. Let's go Oilers.